Throughout history, the resilient and united Iranian nation has withstood deeper wounded and faced more vicious enemies, and this time too it will show its dignity, strength, and greatness to the world. Over the past 10 days, the Israeli barbaric assault, the international bodies, including the UN Security Council and the International Atomic Energy Agency, have been provided with all the necessary information and warning. Yet, they have proven once again that the so called 8 decades long quest to prevent war and aggression is hollow and powerless in practice. Madam President, history will not forget these tragic days. It is profoundly heartbreaking that a peace loving country, one of the founder of the United Nations with over 5,000 years of culture and civilization, responsible party to the UN Charter and the NPT, and non-nuclear weapon state, has been under armed attack by an illegitimate regime, no by its chief backer, the United States, but poses thousands of nuclear warheads. The United States, a permanent member of this council, the depositary of the NPT, and the only state that has ever used nuclear weapons, murdering millions in 2 cities, has now once again resorted to illegal force, waged a war against my country under a fabricated and absurd pretext, preventing Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. What a bitter and tragic irony. Madam President, this US and Israeli regime aggression is a clear and flagrant breach of international law. It breaches the primary norms of prohibition of aggression and the very fundamental principles enshrined in the UN Charter, namely Article 2.4, which categorically prohibits the threat or use of force against the sovereignty and territorial integrity of any member state. This illegal act also violates the Charter, the statute of the IAEA, relevant resolution of the Agency General Conference, Security Council Resolution 487 and 2231, as well as the NPT itself. Colleagues, while the representative of the United States continues to make baseless accusations against Iran, the international community is well aware of the well-documented and dark record of military intervention, illegal use of force against other sovereign states, and sponsorship of terrorism by the United States in the Middle East and across the world. The facts speak for themselves. All US allegations against Iran are unfounded, with no legal basis, and politically motivated. One clear example is the horrific and cowardly assassination of martyr Major General Qasem Soleimani and his companions. He was cowardly and deliberately assassinated while visiting Iraq at the formal request of the Iraqi government. This crime, carried out by the United States forces on direct order of the then President of the United States, who yesterday again claims the responsibility for such a heinous crime. Major General Soleimani remains a hero for our people and the nation in the region for countering terrorist groups, in particular Daesh. Madam President, from its illegal invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan to its catastrophic intervention to Libya, the United States had ignored the UN Charter, shattered entire societies, and destabilized the region for decades. The people of these countries continue to pay the price for these reckless policies. Madam President, Israeli attack on June 13 and the US aerial strike on June 21 did not occur in vacuum. They are a direct result of the illegal and politically motivated actions of the United States and its European partners, the United Kingdom, France, and Germany, as well as biased conduct of the IAEA Director General. Undoubtedly, the United States, the UK, and France, 3 permanent members of this council, along with the Israeli regime and the IAEA General Director will bear full responsibility for the death of innocent civilians in Iran, especially women and children, and for destruction of vital civilian infrastructure. Madam President, Iran was preparing for the next round of diplomatic engagement with the United States on June 15, only for Israel to strike Iran 2 days before those talks could take place. In fact, Israel decided to destroy diplomacy. The so-called offer of diplomacy was nothing more than a deceitful policy to mislead the international community. This week, as our foreign minister held talks with the E3 European Troika and the European Union, the United States decided to destroy the diplomacy. What conclusion can be drawn from this situation? From the perspective of Western countries, Iran must return to the negotiation table. But as Iran's foreign minister mentioned, how can Iran return to something it never left, let alone? Madam President, the pattern is evident. The NPT, the cornerstone of non-proliferation regime, has been manipulated into a political weapon instead of granting parties legitimate right to peaceful nuclear energy. It has been exploited as a pretext for aggression and unlawful action that jeopardize the supreme interest of my country. The selective double standards behavior of IAEA board and the Security Council turning a blind eye to Israeli past attack on Iraq's Osirak reactor. It assaults on Iran nuclear sites under IAEA safeguards, and its ongoing aggression is a moral, political, and legal disgrace. This shame will forever tarnish the credibility of these international bodies. With such blatant bias, there is no assurance that the other NPT member will not face similar aggression. Madam President, for more than 2 decades, Israeli, an outlaw nuclear armed regime that refused to join the NPT despite Security Council Resolution 487, has promoted the deceitful and false narrative that Iran is on the cusp of acquiring a nuclear weapon, while there has not been even one shred of evidence to substantiate such baseless allegation. Iran's consistent diplomatic engagement made in good faith, leading to the JCPOA and its full compliance with the commitment therein with the UN Security Council Resolution 2231, demonstrate the very peaceful nature of its nuclear program. Madam President, Iran is acting within its inherent unlawful right of self-defense under Article 51 of the UN Charter. We will take all measures deemed necessary at our disposal to protect our people, our sovereignty, territorial integrity, national and vital interests, and our peaceful nuclear program in accordance with international law. Once again, I would like to remind this esteemed body of its legal and moral obligation. If this Council and the United Nations built to maintain international peace and security fail to act at this decisive moment, they will forever lose their credibility and relevance. Israel and United States are the chief culprits for eroding the rule of law, undermining international law, the IAEA statute, and the non-proliferation regime. However, the silence, double standards, and complicity of international organizations and some Western countries, including France and the UK, are equally reprehensible. The UN Security Council should immediately act under Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter to redress such injustice and gross violation by strongly condemning the blatant aggression violation and heinous crimes committed against the Islamic Republic of Iran, adopting effective enforcement action against the aggressor, hold the United States and Israeli regime fully accountable, place the Israeli nuclear facilities under agency safeguard. This is a historic test for this Council, for the United Nations as a whole. Every state and every responsible actor must rise to this occasion and condemn without ambiguity. These blatant crimes, failure to do so, will lead to the gradual decline of the very aspiration of the non-proliferation regime and normalize a dangerous precedent when might our rights, right, and where the fundamental principles of the UN Charter are trampled without consequences. Madam President, distinguished colleagues, we stand at the crossroads. Let us be the moment we put an end to impunity, the moment we uphold the principles on which this Council was founded. This Council must act decisively. Silence will be complicity in these crimes. If this Council fails to act and condemn this blatant aggression, the stain of complicity will forever remain on its conscience as it does with Gaza. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran for his statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Israel.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I would like to thank the Secretary General, ASG Yancha, Director General Grossi, for your remarks. Madam President, last night, history changed. The United States of America struck Iran's nuclear sites at Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. The United States, the leader of the free world, removed the greatest existential threat facing the free world. Just like our Operation Rising Lion, this was not a war of choice. This action was a necessity. It was a righteous act for the United States, for Israel, for the Middle East, and for the world. So the entire world should say on record today, here and now, thank you. Thank you to the United States for removing the greatest threat to global security. Thank you, President Trump, for acting when so many hesitated. Thank you for protecting the free world with strength and with moral clarity. Now, some come here to denounce the United States and Israel. So let me ask you, where were you? Where were you when Iran raced toward the bomb? Where were you when it enriched uranium far beyond the point of civilian usage? When it buried entire fortress beneath mountain to prepare for our extermination? Where were you when Iran turned negotiation into theater and deceit into strategy? You were silent. You were complicit. You were afraid. You were bystanders. Months ago, I sat before this council and called for a coalition of the courageous. I called for a coalition with the moral clarity and strength to confront the greatest threat our world has seen since the Second World War. Last night, the leader of the free world acted with that courage. The United States acted, not just for itself, but for every nation that values freedom over radicalism. For every nation whose children deserve to grow up without the shadow of a nuclear disaster hanging over their heads. Now, the world must follow suit. Madam President, we have heard many calls for diplomacy today in this chamber. We have heard the Secretary General calls for de-escalation. You cannot ignore that diplomacy was tried over and over. The United States led that effort. Many nations here in this room engaged in diplomacy with determination and good faith. But the regime in Tehran had other plans. It used the negotiating table as camouflage, a delay tactic, a way to buy time while building missiles and enriching uranium. Iran negotiated agreements it never intended to keep. It made commitments it never honored. It answered deadlines with defiance and met oversight with obstruction. The free world gave it every chance. We gave it months, we gave it years, we gave it every possible off-ramp. Iran would not move. So it had to be moved. The regime goals was never peaceful energy. Its goal was death and destruction. Its nuclear program was not a diplomatic puzzle. It was a loaded gun pointed at the heart of the international system and the stability of the world. To those who now fake concern and cry escalation, we say, this is what the last line of defense looks like, when every other line has failed. Make no mistake, the cost of inaction would have been catastrophic. A nuclear Iran would have been a death sentence just as much for you as it would have been for us. Madam President, while Iran fired rockets at synagogues, mosques, schools, and homes, the United States acted with precision, as does Israel. Israel's targets are not cities. They were not civilians. They were not homes or schools. They are ballistic missile launchers and nuclear sites. This is a moral difference between us and them. They seek chaos, we seek order. They build weapons to destroy the world, we build partnerships to protect it. As you all know, we have already gained air superiority across Iranian skies. We have acted with purpose. We have acted with restraint, and we will act with the moral clarity that has always defined our people. Iran's reach extends far beyond our borders. It arms militias in Iraq, it commands terror in Lebanon, it funds Houthis in Yemen, it plots murder in Europe, and it threatens every capital in the West with its growing arsenal of ballistic missiles. You cannot sit this one out. You cannot condemn the firefighters while the arsonist tries to light more fires. You cannot protect peace by appeasing evil. Colleagues, Israel did not seek this moment, but when that moment came, we did not flinch. We know what happens when the world turns a blind eye to threats too terrible to imagine. This time, we acted, and this time, we were not alone. Let the record show, when the world stood at the edge of a nuclear disaster, America stepped forward. When time ran out, America showed courage. And when the moment came to confront the forces of extinction, America led. Now it is time for the rest of the world to guarantee that the threat of a nuclear Iran never returns. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Israel for his statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Kuwait.
شكرا السيدة الرئيسة.
Thank you, Madam President. Allow me at the outset to wish you and your friendly country to thank you for quickly
وأشكر
calling
معالي
for
الأمين
this
العام على
meeting
وجوده
and to
وعلى
thank the Secretary
كلماته
General for
الصائبة
being
في
here and
بداية
for
هذه
his righteous
الجلسة.
words at the
والشكر
start of
موصول
this
كذلك
session.
إلى
I
ميروسلاف
also thank Mr.
وإلى رافائيل
Miroslav
جروسي على
Grensha and
مداخلاتهم
Mr. Grossi for their valuable
سادة أعضاء
briefings.
مجلس الأمن بالنيابة
Ladies
عن
and
دول
gentlemen,
مجلس
member of
التعاون
the Security Council,
بدول
on
الخليج
behalf of
العربية
GCC
والتي تضم
countries
كل من
that
دولة
include
الإمارات العربية
the State
المتحدة
of United Arab
ومملكة
Emirates, the
البحرين
Kingdom of
والمملكة
Bahrain, the
العربية
Kingdom of
السعودية
Saudi
ودولة
Arabia,
قطر
the State of
سلطنة
Qatar, the
عمان
Sultanate
وبلاد
of
دولة
Oman, and
الكويت.
my country, Kuwait.
فإننا نؤكد
We
بأن
reiterate
المجموعة
that the
الخليجية
GCC
تتابع
group
ببالغ القلق
follows with grave
التطورات
concern
المتسارعة في
the
المنطقة
accelerating
لا
developments
سيما
in the
تلك
region,
الأخيرة
particularly
التي
the most
شملت
recent
استهدافا
developments that included
لمنشآت
the
نووية
targeting of nuclear
داخل أراضي
facilities
الجمهورية الإسلامية
inside
الإيرانية
Iran,
في تطور
in a
خطير
dangerous
يهدد
development
الأمن
that
والاستقرار
threatens
الإقليمي
regional
والدولي
and international peace
كما
and
وتحذر
stability.
دول المجلس من تداعيات
GCC
استمرار
countries
هذا
warn
التصعيد
against
الذي
the
قد
repercussions
يقود
of
إلى
the
مزيد من
continuation of this
التوتر
escalation that could lead to
ويفاقم
further
المخاطر
tensions
التي
and
تواجه أمن
exacerbate risks
المنطقة
that face the
وشعوبها
security of the region and its peoples.
وتدعو إلى الوقف
We call
الفوري
for an
للأعمال
immediate
العسكرية
cessation of
وممارسة
military
أقصى درجات
actions
ضبط النفس
and exercise of
وتجنب
maximum
كل ما من
restraint,
شأنه
avoiding
توسيع
anything
دائرة
that could lead to
الصراع
a spillover of
مع
this
التأكيد
conflict,
على
while
أن الحوار
reiterating that
والسبل
dialogue and
الدبلوماسية
diplomatic
هي
means
الطريقة
are
الأمثل
the
لمعالجة
best
الخلافات
means to
والوصول إلى
address
حلول
conflicts
سلمية.
and reach
وفي هذا
peaceful
السياق
solutions. In this
تشدد
context,
دول المجلس على
GCC
أهمية
countries
اطلاع مجلس
reiterate the
الأمن
importance for this council
والمجتمع
and
الدولي
the international community to
بمسؤولياتهم
shoulder
الكاملة
their
نحو وقف
responsibilities
هذه
fully
الانتهاكات
towards
والعمل
stopping these
الجاد على
violations
ضمان
and to
احترام
genuinely
سيادة
work
الدول
on ensuring the
وسلامة
respect of the sovereignty
منشآتها
of states
الحيوية
and the safety of
بما في
their
ذلك
critical
المنشآت
facilities,
النووية
including
الخاضعة
nuclear
لنظام
facilities
الضمانات
that are
الشاملة
under the
التابع للوكالة
IAEA
الدولية للطاقة
safeguards
الذرية.
regime.
كما تعرب دول المجلس عن
GCC
قناعتها
countries
الراسخة
express
بضرورة
their deep
تغليب
conviction
الدبلوماسية
that there
والحوار
needs to
لحل
be
الخلافات
to give priority
ضمن
to diplomacy
مقاربات
and dialogue
شاملة
to settle
تحقق الاستقرار
conflicts and
والازدهار
disagreements
والعدالة
within
وتعيد
comprehensive
التأكيد على
approaches that
ضرورة
achieve
مضافعة
stability,
الجهود
prosperity, and justice.
الهادفة
And we
لإيجاد
reiterate the
حلول سياسية
importance of doubling efforts
تكفل
that
إنهاء
aim at
الأزمة
finding
بما
political
يؤدي إلى
solutions to
فتح
put an
صفحة
end to this
جديدة
crisis and
من
open a
الأمن
new
والاستقرار
page
في
of
المنطقة.
security and
وفي
stability
الختام
in the
السيد
region.
الرئيس
In conclusion, Madam
فإن
President,
دول مجلس
GCC
التعاون تلتزم
countries
التزاما
are
راسخا
firmly
بدعم
committed
كافة
to
الجهود
support
الإقليمية
all
والدولية
regional and
الرامية
international
إلى
efforts
نزع
aiming
فتيل
at
الأزمة
diffusing this
وترسيخ الأمن
crisis and
والاستقرار
consolidating
والحفاظ على
security and
مصالح
stability
الشعوب في
and to
المنطقة
preserve the
والعالم.
interests of peoples in
وشكراً
the region
سيد
and the world.
الرئيس.
Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Kuwait for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Iraq.
شكرا السيد الرئيس.
I thank you, Madam President. I thank you for and value your efforts in convening this emergency session. We thank His Excellency the Secretary General for participating in this meeting and acknowledging the gravity and the repercussions of the current situation and his calls for de-escalation. We thank the Assistant Secretary General as well as the Director General of the IAEA. Madam President, the Security Council meets today in an emergency session, and it bears upon its shoulders the task of maintaining international peace and security at a time when our region is witnessing a dangerous escalation that threatens to destabilize the world and the region. Iraq speaks in a moderate voice and expresses its extreme concern over the accelerating and dangerous developments that the region is witnessing, at the forefront of which is the ongoing military escalation and the ensuing military attack against 3 nuclear reactors in Iran. And we believe in Iraq that this attack is a dangerous escalation and a direct threat to regional and international peace and security. It risks increasing the chances of conflict and the chances of the war expanding as other regional and international parties join the fray with no authorization by the Security Council. This raises serious questions on the respect for the global order that is based on international legitimacy. Madam President, the developments that the region and the current conflict have witnessed is a true test of the rules-based international system that is based on international law and the UN Charter. Unilateral actions that bypass the Security Council weaken the prestige of the international organization and keep the door open to military chaos with unpredictable consequences. Moreover, targeting nuclear facilities, regardless of the disagreements over such facilities, is a dangerous precedent that runs counter to diplomatic efforts that aim to resolve the nuclear file through dialogue and international controls, especially the role of the IAEA in this matter.
إن
Iraq
استهداف
confirms
منشآت
that
نووية
targeting
معلنة
declared
يعد
nuclear
سابقة
facilities
خطيرة
is
في
a
نظام
dangerous
عدم
precedent
الانتشار
in the
والنظام الضمانات
non-proliferation
الشامل
regime and
كما أشار
the
إليه قرار مجلس الأمن
comprehensive safeguards regime
487
as
وقرار مجلس
indicated
محافظي
in
الوكالة
the
لعام
resolution 487 as well as the
1981
IAEA Board of
ويتعارض مع
Governance.
أحكام المادة
It also
الرابعة
runs
من
counter
معاهدة
with
عدم انتشار
Article 4
الأسلحة
of
النووية
the
والتي
NPT
تكفل لجميع
Treaty,
الدول
which
الأطراف
guarantees
الحق في
all member
تطوير
states the right
واستخدام الطاقة
to develop
النووية
and use
لأغراض
nuclear
سلمية
energy for
ضمن
peaceful
إطار
purposes
الشفافية
within a
والرقابة
framework of
الدولية
transparency and
كما أن استهداف
international
المنشآت
oversight.
النووية قد تؤدي إلى
Targeting
تسربات
nuclear
إشعاعية
facilities
كارثية
could lead to
تتجاوز حدود
catastrophic
الدولة
radiation
المستهدفة
leakage
وتشكل
that would go
تهديدا
beyond
مباشرا
the
لحياة
borders of
الإنسان
the targeted
والبيئة
state
في
and
الدول
would pose
المجاورة
a direct
ومنها
threat
العراق
to the lives of nearby
ولا
human
سيما
beings and the
مع
environment, including Iraq.
خطورة التسرب الإشعاعي
We note
العابر
the
للحدود
dangerous nature of
وتأثيراته على
cross-border
دول
radiation
المنطقة
leakage and
وشعوبها
how it affects
الذي
the
يشكل
countries and
خطرا
peoples of
فادحا
the region.
ونحذر
This
من
is a
الآثار
serious
البيئية
danger, and we
والإنسانية
warn of
الوخيمة
the dire environmental and
ويؤسفنا أن نشير إلى
human
أن هذا
consequences of
التطور
this.
العسكري قد
We regret to
ضيق
note
المساحة
that
الزمنية
this
والفرص
military development
الدبلوماسية
has
أمام
narrowed the
أي حل
timeline and diplomatic
سلمي
horizon for
محتمل
a potential
ولم يتح
peaceful
الفرصة
resolution.
الكافية
Moreover, it did
للمفاوضات
not give
والمساعي السياسية
negotiations and political
لاحتواء
attempt to
التوتر
resolve tensions
كما
a chance.
حال دون قيام
It
الوكالة
also
الدولية
prevented the
للطاقة الذرية
IAEA
بدورها
from performing
الفني
its
وفق
technical
ولايتها
role in
المحددة
accordance with
بموجب النظام الأساسي
its
في
mandate
التحقق من
as
طبيعة
stipulated
الأنشطة
by its
النووية.
statute,
السيد
which is
الرئيس
to
لقد
verify the
شهدت
nature of
منطقتنا
nuclear
على
activity.
مدار العقود
Madam
الماضية
President, our region
حالات
and over the past
متكررة
decades
من
has witnessed
التوتر
repeated
وعدم الاستقرار
situations of
حيث
tension and
عانت شعوبها
instability.
من ويلات
Our
الحروب
peoples have
والصراعات
suffered
التي
from
أزهقت
war
الأرواح
and conflict
ودمرت البنى
that have
التحتية
brought
وعرقلت
death upon the
مسارات
people and
التنمية
destruction upon
واليوم
infrastructure
نجد
and have obstructed
أنفسنا أمام
development efforts.
منعطف
We
خطير
find ourselves
يهدد
today before
بإشعال
a
حرب
dangerous
إقليمية
crossroads that
شاملة
threatens to
مع ما
ignite
يرافق ذلك
incomprehensive
من
and all-out
انتهاك
regional
سيادة
war,
الدول
with
عبر
the
التجاوزات
ensuing
المتكررة
violation of the
للمجال
sovereignty
الجوي
of states
والأرضي للدول
through repeated
المجاورة
violations of their
والتأثيرات
airspace
الاقتصادية
and territories as
المدمرة
neighboring
حيث
states,
تتعرض
with the
سلاسل
catastrophic
الإمدادات
economic impacts
العالمية
of that, as
لاضطرابات
global supply
حادة
chains are
وتواجه
experiencing severe
اقتصادات
disruptions
المنطقة
and the
تحديات
economies of
جسيمة
the region are
وتهديد
facing
الممرات
major
المائية التي
challenges.
تشكل شريانا
And as threats
حيويا
continue
للتجارة
to endanger
الدولية
maritime
واقتصادات
passages, which
الدول
are the
إن
lifeline of
العراق ومن
international
منطلق
trade and the
موقعه
economy of
الجغرافي
states.
ودوره
Iraq
الإقليمي
and
يتأثر بشكل
based on its
مباشر بهذه
geographic
التطورات
location and
وقد
regional role, is
سجلنا
directly
ضروبات
impacted by these developments.
متكررة
We have recorded
لمجالنا
repeated
الجوي
violations of
من
our
أطراف النزاع
airspace
وهو
by
ما
the conflicting
نعتبره
parties.
انتهاكا
We consider this
لسيادة
a
العراق
violation of the
وخرقا
sovereignty of Iraq
لقواعد
and the
القانون الدولي
violation of
ولميثاق الأمم
international
المتحدة.
law and the United
نجدد
Nations
هنا
Charter. We
تأكيدنا
renew
الراسخ على
our
رفض
firm
العراق التام لاستخدام
belief,
أراضيه أو
our
مجاله
firm
الجوي
rejection that
لتنفيذ
Iraq absolutely
عمليات
rejects the use
عسكرية
of its territories
تمس
or
أمن
airspace to carry out
وسلامة
military
دول
operations
المنطقة
that harm
ومن
the
أي
safety and
طرف
security
كان
of any state in
ولأي
the region,
غايات.
regardless of the party
وختاما
involved or the
السيد
purposes
الرئيس
invoked. In
نؤكد
closing,
على
Madam
أهمية
President,
إعادة الثقة
Iraq
في العمل
stresses the need
الدولي
to
المشترك
reinstate trust in
وينبغي
joint
أن يعود
international
مجلس الأمن
action. The
ليكون
Security
المنصة
Council must once
الرئيسية
again
لمعالجة
be the main
الأزمات
forum where
وضرورة
crises
احترام
are
سيادة
handled.
الدول
We stress
وعدم
the
استخدام
importance of
أراضيها
respecting the sovereignty of
وأجوارها
states
في
whose
أي
territories and
مواجهات
airspace must not be
عسكرية
used in
دون
any military
موافقتها
confrontation without
وتعزيز
their
الحلول
consent.
الدبلوماسية
Iraq calls for
وندعو
bolstering
إلى
diplomatic
إحياء
solutions
المسارات
and for
التفاوضية
activating negotiations
والاستفادة من
and for
الدروس
learning from
في الأزمات
the
السابقة في
lessons of
المنطقة
past crises in the
وندعو
region.
إلى ضرورة
Iraq
حماية
calls for the
المدنيين
protection of
من أي
civilians from any
أعمال
military
عسكرية
action
تطالهم
that affects
مباشرة
them
أو
directly
تأثيراتها
or
عليهم
indirectly.
ونؤكد أيضا أن شعوب
The peoples
منطقتنا
of our
تنتظر
region
من هذا
are
المجلس
looking to
أن
this council
يتحمل
and
مسؤولياته
expecting
التاريخية
it to shoulder
والقانونية
its historic
في هذه
and legal
اللحظة
responsibilities at
الحاسمة
this crucial
وأن تعلو
juncture,
كلمة
so
الحكمة
that wisdom
والحوار
and
وأن
dialogue
نعمل
would prevail,
جميعا
so that we must work
من أجل
together
إرساء
to lay down
أسس
the
الاستقرار
foundations
والسلام
of
في
stability and
المنطقة
peace in the
بناء
region,
على
foundations
مبادئ
of
العدالة
justice
واحترام
and respect
القانون
for
الدولي
international law
الإنساني
and
وندعو جميع الأطراف
international
إلى
humanitarian law. We
تجنب
call on
المزيد
all
من
parties
التصعيد
to avoid
والعودة
further
إلى الحوار
escalation
الجاد
and to
والمسؤول
return to serious and
حفاظا على
responsible
استقرار
dialogue in order
المنطقة
to maintain the
والعالم
stability of the
وشكرا
region and the
جزيلا
world. I thank
سيد
you.
الرئيس.
I thank the representative of Iraq for his statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned.